When life gives you lemon, you make lemonade. Hello, faithful viewer, and if you're still with me after that lame joke, you truly embody the spirit of faithfulness. Today we have a new episode of Cars I Want to Buy, the series where we look at an interesting vehicle that I want to include in my fantasy garage, but can't actually buy because I have no money or space. We look at the vehicle on offer, go over some of its specs and history, and finally, I provide 3 reasons why I want to buy the car. Today's subject car is a 1973 Pontiac Lemans GT, which is for sale at Grogan Ford in the big city of Watford, Ontario, located mere minutes off the 402 on Nauvoo Road. This Le Mans has an off-yellow paint job with brown accent striping. The interior is 50 shades of brown, but does have bucket seats and a console selector for the automatic transmission. This particular transmission backs a 2-barrel fed 350 that puts out a depressive 150 horsepower and 270 foot-pounds of torque. With dual exhaust, those numbers jump all the way to 175 and 280 respectively. Overall condition of the body, interior, and anything else that they've taken pictures of is really good. I would classify this car as an excellent driver quality car. Not show perfect, but it doesn't really look like it needs anything either. Of note, there are kilometer conversion stickers on the speedometer. For those of you not in the know, here in Canada we switched to the metric system in the early 1970s. At the time, if you wanted, you could get little sticker kits to cover the MPHs with KPHs, since gauges were typically in imperial measurements at the time. 1973 was a pivotal year for the Le Mans nameplate. That year marked the first year for the 4th generation of the model. And with that generation came many compromises to fall in line with ever-tightening regulatory impositions on the automotive sector, particularly in regards to emissions and safety. In addition to the bevy of power-sapping emissions requirements, all cars in 1973 were required to sport 5-mile-per-hour front bumpers. In my opinion, this is one of the first regulatory impositions that started the trend of automotive design being limited by federally mandated safety requirements. A lot of classic car fans like to point out a perceived lack of brand-defining styling among the current and recent generation of cars on the market today. And it's true, compared to the 1950s and 1960s, styling is relatively homogenous. But a lot of this comes from the fact that all cars sold today have to have certain features in order to meet all of the regulatory requirements the automotive industry is obligated to follow. And 1973 was one of the first model years where these regulations made a serious impact on exterior styling. Other design elements that distance the early 4th generation Le Mans from the 3rd include a more aero-inspired rear fascia and a shark nose split grille. The new generation was based on GM's colonnade design, which meant there were no more convertibles or true hardtops available. 1973 would also be the last year for the GTO option in the mid-size segment, as it would be moved to the Ventura for 1974. If you wanted a 4-barrel carb, you had to at least move up to the 400 cubic inch engine, since all 350s in 1973 were only offered with 2 barrels. The beefiest engine of the option list was a 250 horsepower 455 on the GTO. For those of you on a budget, the Le Mans used Chevrolet's 250 cubic inch 6-cylinder as its base engine. So there isn't much in the way of big power performance, but it was fairly well received at first. In 1973, sales came in at almost 234,000 units. This may have been owed in part to the improvements in driving dynamics that came along with the new colonnade platform. Better suspension, including beefier sway bars, stiffer springs, and new geometry greatly improved handling and cornering capabilities. Unfortunately, this wasn't enough for the Le Mans to solidify itself in the market. Sales numbers took a dive, bottoming out to under 50,000 units 2 years later, and never even coming close to the first-year success for the rest of the 4th generation. So what are the 3 things that draw me to this particular colonnade Pontiac? First, the interior. I know it's a lot of 1970s brown, but it's in fantastic condition. Since the interior is where we spend most of our time when we use our cars, it's usually where the flaws bug me the most, since I'm always looking at them. Now, this interior isn't perfect, but it's in excellent shape, and I know I would have very little deficiency angst as I ate up miles behind the wheel of this Le Mans. Secondly, I love that this car seems relatively unmolested and in great overall condition. A lot can happen to a car over a half century, and other than a few minor additions, it all looks more or less original. Since many of the cars from the 1970s were put together with rather dubious build quality by today's standards, rust, cracked plastic, and sun-baked upholstery often plague automobiles of this vintage. Not so in this instance. So the fact that this car is a good survivor makes it desirable to me. Last but not least, I have some nostalgia by association with the Colonnade era Pontiac Lemans. My grandfather's last car before he became a devotee of full-size Chrysler was a mid-1970s Lemans. I'm not too sure about the year, but it was from this particular generation of the model. So because my grandfather owned a similar car to this one, I have a bit of a sentimental soft spot for it. So that's it for today's video. What are your thoughts on the Colonnade platform from GM? Any great memories of this mid-sized 1970s GM stalwart? Let me know in the comments below. And remember to like and subscribe. Also, make sure to ding that bell so you never miss out on any of my inconsistently posted content. And if you do the Instagram, make sure to follow @automophiliac for my random posts of car ads, car spotting finds, cruise nights and car shows, and even the occasional hot take on current automotive news. Thanks for watching. TTFN.